Hello, I'm going to walk you through my approach to solving Notebook 1.3, working both in Jupyter Notebooks through Anaconda as well as through our custom AI model through ASU's Create AI. So here on the left-hand side of my screen, you see the assignment for linear regression, Notebook 1.3. And then what I like to do is keep up on the right-hand side of my screen, the chatbot, which I'll show you right here. This is the chatbot for Module 1 together with the notebook. And so as you go through, make sure that you're following the steps that are here. Um, this first cell, loading and exploring the data, I just copy and pasted and then cut out some of the irrelevant parts from the last two assignments. Um, I had originally had in here where it gives the preview just like this that I've highlighted, but because my second cell also put that in, I decided to take it out and simplify it. So I first read in the data file, as well as importing pandas and NumPy, and then went through and got to cell number 2. So this was the first part where I wanted to engage in a discussion with the AI tool. One thing I'll just show you here, uh, this will save and keep track of all of your conversations with it. Again, this is just the link for Module 1. Module 2 will have a different link, but you can rename the chats by clicking on Edit. And so you can tell it this is Notebook 1.3, so that way you can always go back to it. Something went wrong, try again later. We'll see if that saves, but this is my chat. So what I did was I took what's here on the left-hand side, and I wrote that kind of in my own words, refining it based off of the prompt that we have here. Again, reminding it to generate Python code to run a linear regression. This part I got directly from the assignment. X is the independent variable and Y is the dependent variable. And then I took the second bullet point that we had here, turn that into this part of the prompt. As you do this, I also want to understand the assumptions needed for linear regression and how to check them. And so you'll see what it wound up doing is generating code for me to walk me through the assumptions and to check them one at a time. And it does it both visually, as you'll see, as well as through statistical tests. Um, Again, I reminded it things that the prompt asks us to specifically do, which is calculate the slope and the intercept of the best fit line, calculate R squared and adjusted R squared values, and then finally to add in the regression line for the scatter plot. And that's the best fit line that you'll see there. And the AI tool actually created the equation for it, even though I didn't specifically ask it to. I told it to report all relevant values rounded to the nearest tenth. And I did this again based on the three values here that we are going to ask you to put in onto the Canvas quiz. Then I gave it some more context. I told it that I've already loaded in the data set into a previous Jupyter Notebook cell. I tell it what I named the data frame. This was just the automatic DF for data frame. And that way it knows how to actually write the code that will be compatible with what I already have. If you don't tell it this, it probably will guess it if you're just using the defaults, but it might not, depending on what the context is. So the more you can tell it of what you're calling things, the better that will be. Let's see if this reloads over here. So I go in, copy and paste the results into my Jupyter Notebook, and you can see here, okay, so I ran this, I loaded this in. You see that uh, the star will update. So there's an asterisk in here when you first uh, enter in your new cell. When you put something in here, right? So if you just plug this in, or it's blank, and then once it's running, it'll turn into a star, and then once it finishes, it will turn into a number, showing you that you've successfully ran this. So I ran that, then go through and do this next row, this next cell, where it's creating some basic demographic information, descriptive statistics here. And then as we go through, you can continue to see the conversation that I had with it. So I told it the columns are named X and Y. I put those in tick marks, and so I put that in here. Even if you don't do the tick marks, it'll still interpret it correctly. And then I tell it what I've already imported so it doesn't need to run redundant code. And then for context, I say, whatever you give me, I'll run that in the next code in the cell below. So the first thing is helping me with linear regression and understanding key assumptions. So it's generating some code for that. So first, it's giving me the code for linear regression. I go through, I run this, and then it gives me the results. So you can see those results here. This is what this calculated. It gives me the regression equation. Then let's create visualizations to check the assumptions. And so it's going through, it's giving great comments, so I know exactly what each chunk of code is doing. And then you can see here the visual plots that show how I can check for the assumptions of these linear regression requirements. And so it goes through, it shows me not just visually, but now how do I run statistical tests like Shapiro-Wilk, Durbin-Watson, checking for homoscedasticity, three of those tests to be able to see what the assumptions are. And it's even putting in here into the code, giving me a check mark if it meets it, or giving me an X if it does not meet the requirements. So I'm able to see what that looks like. And I wanted to show you this part. I saved this here because when I ran this, there was an error message. And so the error message tells me exactly which line this is coming from, line 12 of this chunk. And there's some problem with this line right here that's highlighted. And so if I look at what the error actually tells me, it's trying to import Durbin-Watson, but that's not finding the right library. So what all I do is, and Dr. Woodbury showed you this in one of his prior videos, copy and paste this error message back into ChatGPT. And so right after that, this is what I did. I pasted that in. I said, when running the statistical tests, I received this error, pasted it in, and automatically the AI found what was wrong. So it was talking about a newer version of stats models. And so I just took this, copy and pasted this. Sometimes you'll have to click this a couple times here to get the check mark. But then once I go in, the part that I want you to see here is if you get an error, don't leave that error in your notebook, but instead go back to the part that gave you the error, copy or actually paste over that with the new revised code. And so now you get the code that works. I'm going to go ahead and delete. I have the same thing here saved for you. But you can go ahead and just you run this and you get this output right here. So that way it gets rid of the error. You still have the error back in your setup on here in the AI, in the chat history, but you're able to still move on. So then I can go back up and I can learn about the assumptions of linear regression, go through and see what these are looking at and use the output that it gave me to help diagnose and decide whether or not this is a valid linear regression that I can run. So we went through, this was the end of running the linear regression. And now we'll continue on with this next part, and I'll show you this in real time. So cell number 3, we'll do it in here. So cell number 3, I can copy and paste in here and tell it, okay, now I'm going to do the next step. Tell it exactly what you want it to do. Please generate 2, and then calculate the residuals, actual y minus predicted y, to create a histogram of the residuals. Then please also tell me what the distribution should look like if the linear regression is appropriate. I want to be sure to check for patterns that might indicate problems with the model. Finally, I will need to report the residual value for the first observation, so row number 1, rounded to the nearest tenth. So you can run this either as 1 or separate it out, but let's go ahead and see what it gives us. So again, as you go through, you'll be able to take what you do in your code here and then run that back and forth between ChatGPT, or in this case, the Claude model on Sonnet, and between Jupyter Notebook. So you'll go back and forth, you'll iterate, and then you'll report out your final results onto Canvas. So this is what this has given me here. I will let you go ahead and finish this assignment on your own, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.